Okay, well, welcome. Hope you're having a good time here at the conference. This session is going to be on Windows Media Services and .NET Server. My name is Bret. I'm the Group Program Manager for this product. I'm going to take you through the next hour of the kind of scenarios and the types of design goals that we had for this product. We're going to hold questions to the end, but please do make sure to write them down so we can go through and discuss all of them. And I'm going to take you through a pretty thorough walkthrough of the product today. And this is a pretty exciting new product. It's got a lot of new capabilities in it. If you're familiar with, how many people are actually using Windows Media Services in Win2K today? Is anybody here? Anybody else? Okay. Well, if you're familiar with 4.1, kind of keep some of the core key concepts of that product, but then this product is actually a completely new kind of design. We've got a brand new re-architecture from the ground up with a ton of new capabilities in it. And so it's a really exciting new product for us. It's been in development for quite a long time. We're very excited about it for .NET Server and the kind of capabilities that it can bring for corporations and internet. So the kind of things I'm going to go through today are streaming media landscape, kind of where we've been and where we're going now. Talk about Windows Media Corona, which you may have heard about, which is something just introduced at Christmas at Streaming Media East, which is a end-to-end set of components which make up this new streaming capability that I'll get into. We'll talk in depth about what Windows Media Service is all about and the customer scenarios we targeted the product at. Talk about some in-depth capabilities, so we'll go through some 4 key design pillars and all the features within those pillars in detail. And those will be where we spend most of our time today. At the end, I'll talk about some enterprise deployment, and there's a number of different kinds of ways to deploy this technology. And then wrap up with some packaging issues and also what we do next. Okay, so where were we in the last 10 years or 12 years with streaming media? It's basically been, an internet-focused technology for the most part. The corporate take of streaming media and digital media in general is really starting to go on the uptake here, where we're seeing now a lot of scenarios being implemented in the inside of enterprises. But in the past, it's been really more internet-focused, where business models are more focused on advertising and pay-per-view, et cetera. And those models, as we've all seen in the last couple of years, had a really tough time surviving. Mostly because of the numbers don't work out, and obviously the economics of streaming don't work out. But we really are still focusing on those areas on one hand in this product, trying to make sure the economics actually work, but we've also focusing quite heavily on the corporate enterprise, because this is where we see a lot of new scenarios being taken up by a lot of corporations and a lot of new capabilities being exercised, and especially with the cost of traveling, et cetera, and training, digital media technology is people are going to in lots of ways to actually solve some of their problems and actually reduce costs for their employees. So it's actually quite an exciting new area for a lot of companies. As a matter of fact, today we actually see about 25% of corporations using it, and in a recent study we actually see that this is going to really go on the uptick. This is going to be a huge growth area for us. So in December, we announced something called Windows Media Corona, and this is really a set of end-to-end technologies which incorporates codecs, an SDK, the player, an encoder, and also the new streaming media services inside of .NET Server. .NET Server, Windows Media Services and .NET Server is going to be the first component actually released, or it's the first one that's been announced in more detail and is further along in the product cycle. The rest of these components are coming out over the next couple of quarters. But put together, there's a lot of things that are enabled by putting these things together. Certainly there's a lot of new features in our player which are necessary in order to take advantage of these features that are also in the server. We focus on enabling current players that are deployed in the corporations and actually bringing a lot of cool new capabilities, even to current players that are deployed. But the new player, for instance, will bring a lot more capabilities. And put together, these things really start to enable a number of new cool key scenarios. And we'll get into a lot of those types of things over the course of the day. The product was designed in 2 big buckets, designed for 2 big buckets of scenarios, one corporate and one commercial based. Around the corporate enterprise, we see that these 3 key scenarios are really starting to take a stronghold in corporations. So the typical live executive broadcast, and I'll get into details in these top 3, so I won't go into details right now, on-demand training, and what we call programmed broadcasts. In the commercial space, It's also this product has got a number of new capabilities, again, to try to drive the economics and make things work for content providers on the internet. So actually the advertising business models and pay-per-view business models actually begin to work. And in those areas, things like news and entertainment, so video on demand, news from the CNN or MSNBC or MSN sites, you can go out and get, or NPR, those kinds of things. Also NVOD or near video on demand types of capabilities. Internet-based radio and TV stations, where you see a lot of internet-specific radio stations, even personalized to your own likings. So you can design your own jazz/classical personalized station designed just for you, and you can fine-tune it by saying, I like that album, that artist, etc. And also radio rebroadcast, where you just take thousands of stations around the world, right, and rebroadcast them on the internet. And there are also some issues with rights with AFTA-related issues, if you're familiar with this kind of stuff. Pay-per-view and wireless subscription. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the product, while I'm not focusing on the bottom part today, because really we're focused more on the corporate enterprise and the growth there, the product is very much designed for these kind of capabilities. As we get into the 4 key design sections for the product, you'll see actually a lot of features designed towards those areas as well. So we look more specifically at those 3 top corporate scenarios. Live executive broadcast. This is a typical where the CEO or a manager in the corporation wants to stand up in front of the company and do a live presentation without having to have everybody around the company or from remote offices around the world come into that particular headquarters and actually watch it live. So this is that presentation that gets streamed across the web. An announcement goes out, an email that says at 9 o'clock this morning, Bill Gates is going to address the company. We do this all the time inside of Microsoft, actually, where Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer or whoever will actually get up and address the whole company, and everybody joins in at the same time. We also make these things available on demand afterwards. Obviously, a lot of people who can't watch at that time want to watch it and archive it in an archive fashion. We look at the target audiences for the configuration for this kind of thing, and it's mostly IT professionals that actually basically just have to set this up, and I'm going to actually show you how to set it up in a demo here briefly. The key features that are enabled from this are pretty simple. They're basically, you've got to get a camera together, you've got to be able to have an infrastructure that reaches a worldwide audience potentially, remote offices, etc., and also provide a multicast capability, because most corporations are very concerned, obviously, about the network impact of streaming media. So what is it that I have to do to control my streams so that I don't impact mission-critical data on the network? And I'll show you a number of features in this product that are designed for that particular use. But multicast is obviously key for reducing that network traffic so that you don't have thousands of streams connecting. You have basically one stream that goes out to the broad set of customers. The next scenario, on-demand training. This one's actually quite simple from a server perspective. You put a couple of clips of on the streaming media server, much like you would an HTML file on a web server, and you stream it. But what's far more impactful to people actually wanting to watch a presentation is what you actually can do around that particular stream. If you notice the picture here, there are slides to the right and video on the left and an index down below the video. Okay. Well, this is to actually produce a scenario like this. There's something called Producer, Microsoft Producer, which actually has a number of cool capabilities to easily pull together rich media presentations using HTML, streaming digital media streaming from a server, etc., and put that all into a presentation, which makes it very easy for someone to sit back and actually get a lot more information about the broadcast instead of just watching a talking head. And so I'll actually go through and show you how easy it is to put this together in a demo here shortly. But this is basically a way to obviously provide for your knowledge workers in a corporation a way to actually get more rich information and provide more value in the presentation than just watching straight video. And thirdly, a program broadcast. If you can imagine, if you will, you've got a company like Microsoft, Ford, any large company, even medium or small company, has a lot of assets that you'd want to, or information that you want to be able to provide to your knowledge workers. So this could be a conference that actually happened last week that, of course, you can't send your entire company to, but you want to provide that conference online. It might be events, product announcements. Again, a CEO broadcast that happened 2 weeks ago you want to provide on an ongoing basis. Well, you can make all that on demand, provide all that content on demand to end users, but a far more interesting way to do it, and a lot of companies are very interested in this kind of model, is to basically provide a channel. So everyone becomes very familiar with the 3 corporate channels that are provided inside their company, and these are like 7 by 24 channels you can connect to and carousel content within. So you could put the entire conference and just have it being broadcast constantly. You can actually jump into any one of those channels with a particular live presentation or emergency announcement or something like that. Well, we built some cool capabilities into the server to basically enable a 7x24 broadcast channel that you dynamically program. So this is actually quite useful for the corporation. It's also very useful for the internet, where you might put together a whole channel of different genres of music, for instance, or different kinds of music videos or things like that. So there's a ton of cool capabilities for this new server that allows you to create these channels. So what we're going to get into now is actually some demos of all three of those areas. So let's switch over to my demo machines today that I have, by the way. I have a laptop up here, and it's a P850, something like that. This one's also a P850. This is my encoder machine. I have a camera kind of situated on the left side of that, and this one they both actually have servers installed as well. So I'm going to use a combination of both. As I go through the demos, I'll describe which ones I'm actually using. So if you take a look here, what I'll show you first off is our new administrator. So if you're familiar with the 4.1 UI, you can throw that out. There's actually brand new administration across the board for this product. This is our Microsoft Management Console interface. It's a brand new interface for us in this version. We also have a complete web-based administration that's a true web-based administrator, which I'll get into a little bit later. And you have, in this case, in this version of the server, you have full control capabilities, full configuration and monitoring capabilities inside of this user interface. So anything you can do on the server, you can do through here. All of this UI is built on top of, by the way, our platform APIs, which I'll get into in a little more detail later on. But everything that we've built into the server is platform first, and then features and solutions built on top of that as well. This entire interface, like I say, is built on top of those APIs, so if you wanted to customize anything, you could. But before I actually show you those three scenarios, I'll show you a couple of features around the new UI. One thing here is this interface is kind of helps you get started. So you can understand first the kind of scenarios that you want to actually stream. If you want to stream broadcast content or on-demand content, you want to create playlists, which I'll talk about. You can get familiar with the features by actually going to a tour. This is brand new in the product. Helps acclimate you to all of the features inside the product. So you can go through here, let this run, and it actually gets into all the capabilities. This is an early prototype. Actually, there'll be a lot of graphics actually added to this. If you wanted to find out what's new, you can click here. If you're a really fast consumer of information, you can click this down here and actually sit there and it'll zip you through if you're a really fast reader. Anyway, this is cool, so you can actually get more acclimated to the product. Also, as soon as you install the product, things like testing your server to make sure that it actually works are capable through this UI. We have a brand new way to test content in the user interface, unlike the old version as well. And then also, just to kind of walk you through what you see here, on the left is the name of a server with some object types underneath it. Publishing points are still publishing points in this version of the server. However, we've really collapsed everything of the old world, where if you're familiar with Station Manager and unicast streaming and the multicast capabilities, there's like 4 different NT services we've collapsed into one now. So it's a far more simplified object model, far more simplified interface. Anyhow, and then there's also, as you walk through here, you can get information about streaming and different properties of the server at the server level. You can also come down to a particular publishing point, and you get tabs here that also give you more information. So as I go through the interface today, these are just some of the things that I'll introduce a lot more actually of. So that first scenario we talked about, I'm going to go through each of the 3 scenarios and how you would set those up. I'll show you on this particular machine here. I'll switch over to it. I got an encoder running. And basically just got a picture of the screen at the top there. And the first scenario was basically setting up the live executive broadcast. So I'll show you how easy it is inside of this version of the server to now do that. You want to stream it's broadcast content you want to be able to stream it throughout your corporation. Again, this is a multicast that's going out to a whole number of people. And we have a wizard that takes you through all of the choices you have for that. So you give it a name, call it the corporate multicast, for instance. You're going to go to an encoder or a playlist of content, etc. We're going to go to an encoder. We're going to broadcast it as opposed to on demand. Every encoder is always a broadcast experience. Again, broadcast versus on-demand. That's broadcast is your TV-like experience, the passive experience, whereas an on-demand is more active experience. Then you get a choice how to unicast it, or in this case, I'm going to multicast it and allow some unicast rollover. And then I provide an URL to where my encoder's at, which is right next to me here. I can provide logging at this on this publishing point if I want, which is a new capability inside of this new version of .NET Server. And then also, and I'm actually done now, I've created that publishing point. What we're doing in this version is actually also allowing you to set up an announcement of that content. So far, all I've done is created a publishing point, which you can actually see back here where my pointer is. And I'm actually going to be pulling a stream from this encoder. And now I'm going to basically announce it so that I can send files out to everyone in my organization to connect to that particular broadcast. And you can see how easy it is to create those announcements now. So you come in here, and much like the old world, you provide a stream format for the announcement. You can provide a logging URL if you'd like to. And then you create these things called NSC files, which I won't get into a lot of details of here. And then similar to the old version, you can also create different types of things like web pages and ASX files right inside the wizard. So far, I'm just doing a lot of clicking without a whole lot of typing. And lo and behold, you get actually kind of cool, which is new in this version, is you can actually now test that content. So with just a lot of pointing and clicking really going on, you can actually then connect to this encoder, create a multicast. I'm actually multicasting across the Microsoft network right now for this live executive broadcast. So it's actually quite easy. And I'll let it kind of connect here. You can also come back here, and I had selected that I wanted to test just in the player, or I could also test with inside the web page. So you can do both. In this case, showing this to the encoder looks like up there. So it's pretty easy to set up. So in that second scenario, take a look now, that's the live executive broadcast. This next scenario is about the producer that I mentioned, where you can actually provide a rich media experience around content to make it a lot more engaging. So for that, I'm going to bring up Microsoft Producer. And I have a project already loaded, which has video segments, a set of slides, which were output from PowerPoint, which already synchronized with this particular content. And I'll put both of these basically together, and I'll show you how easy it is. You've got a timeline down here. You've got your clips up here. All you have to do is drag and drop onto your timeline. So this is the beginning part of the video that I want to display. I can then take and drag the ending if I'd like. I have a sample interview that I actually also have encoded here. I can take that if I want to, just to show you how you can slice it in between. You can do that. Now this line right here represents where you can start from. I'll actually back this up at this point, but you can actually start and test your content at any point along this timeline. So now I have my video up there. If I want now, I can take the slide deck that I had output. So just like I'm presenting today, we're going to work together to take the slide deck that I'm presenting today along with the video, and we just basically do this exact same scenario. Watch how easy it is. You take your entire slide deck, you drop it on the timeline. Again, as I'm talking and going through this, what's happening in the back of the room actually is we're having triggers where the slides are changing to where I'm actually at the video. So literally you'll be able to take this content together, pull in this tool, and these timelines and triggers will all be presented for you. So now I have basically the slides and the video put together, and now I want to provide a template for how I want this to look. If you remember, there was a video in the upper left and slides on the right. Well, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can actually configure that for output. And these are all the different ways you can do that. Take a look through here, big video, etc., slides without video. You can present these ways. And you can also, what's cool, and I'll show you actually now, is you can actually, too, change it halfway through the presentation, change the format. So I'll start off with smaller video and a larger slide deck. Then I'm going to switch it. You notice the camera here. The camera here, basically, this is now a larger format and that drops there. And then actually, for this middle clip, I'll have that end with this format, and I'll actually jump back to the camera as a smaller video clip in the upper left-hand corner, like that. And I can actually trim this out if I want to. So what's going to happen is I'm going to have video playing with audio and slides synchronized to it, and then it's going to change dynamically as I go through the presentation, the format of what it looks like. And that's it. It's pretty darn easy. Now if I take a look here, these tabs at the top, I can go through and actually preview this. I can hide the timeline. So this is what it's going to look like. These are all the slides from the deck. Here's the video. So we'll go ahead and start it.
Hi, I'm Rebecca, and I'm here with the next installment of Train the Interviewer. Before we get started with today's section on investigating background issues, I want to quickly go over the last section concerning the candidate's background. In Section 2, we looked at the history of the candidate.
So what I'll do also is, that second clip that I added, the sample that I put in between the two videos, I'll actually jump to that now. And that's where actually I changed the format, the template, if you remember, from video in the upper left to video in the lower right.
Was calculating the special regimes for infrared lasers.
And then, of course, you can always jump back to other points in the...
In this portion of the interview, remember, you want to
that's pretty cool.
Three things.
It's very easy to put these together. There's also some other cool features of this. If I back this up, if I didn't know where the timing points were for the slides in the video because you didn't output them correctly or something like that, they have a cool feature here which is synchronize, which allows you to actually go in and see your slides behind this, see your video here, and you can actually see your video and time where those slides go.
Next installment.
I'll let this run.
The interviewer. Before we get started with today's section,
I'm going to drop a slide right where she ends this comment.
I want to quickly go over the last section concerning the candidate's background. In Section 2, we looked at the history of the candidate.
And so on. I just clicked that point. So what's cool is you can synchronize everything together post facto if you want, if you haven't already done so in a presentation like we're doing today. There's also some capabilities for publishing this content. You can actually post it on the local computer or out to a web server or a network server, etc. So it's a very cool tool. Okay. So basically, once you have that content, you basically putting the streaming media on a Windows Media Service and streaming that to end user, but now they're also getting much richer presentation behind it. So the third demo that we wanted to show you was the program broadcast. If you remember what this is where you have a constantly running 7x24 channel of corporate information that anyone can connect to at any point during the day and watch. So I'll show you some new capabilities inside the server, and one of the key capabilities here is called a server-side playlist. So how many people are familiar with ASXs on the client-side ASXs? Okay, so this is similar to that technology, where it's basically a playlist that the player's playing, but that now playlist you're capable of executing on the server. Okay, so client makes one connection inside of the ASX, or just one entry, which is connected to the server, but now the server has 300, 5, n number of playlist entries that it executes on behalf of that player. There's a lot of cool benefits for that I'll get into in the presentation. So what this is, again, this channel is a multicast. It's going out to the whole organization. It's a 7x24 thing. It's a carouseling of content, and so that's the kind of thing that we want to set up now. So this user interface, you go to broadcast content, stream broadcast content. Again, you're going through the wizard. You're just going to choose different choices now as you go through. So in this case, we'll call it corporate multicast 2. Now, instead of an encoder, I'm actually going to create a playlist of content. Again, this is a sequential list of content that I want to play continuously in a carousel. So I click Playlist, click Next. I want to broadcast it as opposed to on demand, but I have that choice. I can unicast. In this case, I said I want to multicast it. Now, here's where it's different. Whereas before I typed in the name of an encoder for my content, now I'm going to actually list a bunch of content into a new playlist. I can choose an existing one if I want to. So here I'm going to list the files I want to broadcast, and this gives you kind of a nice interface for saying that actually instead of just files, it's a server-side playlist, but you could actually have anything in there. It could be an encoder feed, it could be several files, it could be files on a remote server, and these different entries in here help you understand how to actually go through that content. So if I hit Browse here, I have some content already on here that I'll select. These 3 files I'm going to put inside my playlist. So these are the 3 files I'm going to play in sequence. And I can also, what's going to basically, this entry here is just how you store that playlist. We store it as an XML file as a text file on disk, which is nice so you can move it between servers, etc. I have a choice of looping or shuffling that content. I'm going to loop it, so it's constantly carouseling. I can log this information if I want, and basically, I'm done. So I've now set up a publishing point. If you look behind here, here's corporate MC2. And now again is that second wizard that pops up that says, now let's go tell everyone about this new publishing point. So I'll go through, select the files that I just actually had as part of this. This is again part of the NSC experience, creating NSC files for stream format headers. and a log URL if I'd like. This creates the NSC file. These NSC files are basically metadata files for stream format information. And I'll just select that I want an ASX file this time, and so on. So what this wizard again does is actually creates files that actually get sent out an email, put on a web server, etc., so that people know how to click on it and get to that multicast actually. That's what this wizard's all about. So if I came in here, I can test and show you what this broadcast looks like. So you look back here, this little satellite thing showing, which means it's on. So this is the first clip that plays. Now let's take a look back at what we created. There's actually a lot of cool things that got created for this. If I click on this publishing point, I've got a lot of information about this publishing point across the top here. One of which is just, if you look through all this information now, it's a nice way to see exactly what's going on with this particular broadcast. You can see who's connected. You can see what the bandwidth restrictions are and what the current consumption is. Because this is a multicast, right? There's no consumption because this is just a sessionless thing. The client never really connects to the server for these, so it's a ultimately scalable way of getting a lot of people to watch content. But if you also look at the source here, this source tab shows you the thing I'm sourcing is this new playlist, which I'm executing on the server. And you can actually see dynamically what is actually playing in this playlist. So if I want to, as I mentioned earlier, I could actually also change this on the fly. So this is a new capability in .NET Server, and this for Windows Media Services, where you can, unlike the old version where you had to stop the broadcast and everyone stops what they're watching to, and then you change the playlist, you have to restart it, and everyone has to know to reconnect. It's an awful experience. You can change this dynamically. So everything you can add a ton more content to this. You can delete out everything. You can change it any way you like. So one of the things I have here is a file, breaking news. I want to have everyone jump to see this breaking news. So if I come in here and I drop this in, notice how it just kind of drops in nice. You can rearrange it if you like where it gets. And then I can also click on it and say, let's jump to that now. And what it's basically doing on the server is, if you come in here and see the player experience, you're still watching, but then all of a sudden you'll see that it jumps to what this person has.
Broadcast to bring you a special announcement. We have just closed the merger with Wood Grove Bank.
So this plays through, and then it jumps back to the content. It's pretty cool. So what we're showing here is actually a way to actually fully program the content that you have. You're like a program director at a radio or TV station now, and it's actually in an interface which enables pretty much any IT person or even a sophisticated knowledge worker to know how to actually create their own channel within their corporation. And you have ultimate capability of changing what gets played. Imagine how they do it for TV. You've got content you play on demand, then you go live to a weather, someone out doing the weather and out in the middle of the city. You can jump back then to on-demand content. You have all of that. This was designed with that in mind, basically, is to have full programmability of the content that gets played for end users. And I'll get into a lot more detail on exactly what that is. So that's pretty cool. All right, so now we're going to go back to slides and actually talk about, kind of give you an idea of how the three different key scenarios are set up, and give you a little bit of an idea what the server can do. And what we're going to do now, basically, is get into a lot of detail about what the core design goals were for this product. And they're really centered around four things. Fast streaming, if you haven't heard about this already, this is targeted at actually dramatically improving the end user experience when they watch content. I'll get into a lot of details on that. Dynamic content programming is what you basically just saw, full programmability from the server side on what you're actually watching. Always industrial strength being a key thing as far as scalability, security, hosting capabilities, distribution of content, that kind of stuff. And then also, first and foremost, as a platform. So everything's built for customization in case you're someone that needs to actually customize the server, etc. So first we'll take a look at the fast streaming capabilities. They're really centered around two kind of areas. We call it instant on, always on. So here's the bottom line, right? When you have a user that's connected to your stream, internet or corporate scenario, the experience you'd love to have is a glitch-free performance, right? You, just like TV, you have expectations that you can sit there and watch this full-screen event without freezing. Video going from full motion to just slideshow mode, to audio that cuts out, right? We have all those experiences with internet viewing of content. We don't with TV today. So first and foremost, with the design of this product, and especially when coupled with the other products in the Corona platform, we are trying to absolutely nail this quality factor. Right? This is everything. This is, you can have a bunch of great corporate program channels, etc., but if the end user just finds all these glitches in the content and so on, then it's an awful experience, and you just don't want to watch. So if you can imagine, if you will, you've got a client on one end, you've got a server on the other, and there's lots of stuff that can happen in between that's really plagues that quality. Dropped connections, you've got sometimes lots of fluctuation in bandwidth on your corporate network, especially on the internet with cable modem networks and DSL networks. You've got issues with starting up alone. So what happens when you normally start up a stream? You see buffer 13%, 50%, 79%, it's about 10, 15 seconds it connected even. So we're trying to actually slay that with this whole idea of an instant on experience. And then as you saw that server-side playlist playing through, once you get connected quickly, if you're watching 3 or 4 things play, you'd like to be able to transition between those things quickly. Well, that's also something we've spent a lot of time designing and making sure it's a smooth transition as you switch between content. The idea of always on is you get lots of fluctuation in bandwidth. You got lots of network storms, you've got lots of sometimes data bursts, etc., going across your network. Well, in streaming, right, you expect 300 kilobits to be always going. If all of a sudden your network's only going to give you 200, then what happens? Well, what we call thinning and other kinds of terms for how your content basically degrades an experience. And so this idea of it always on suggests that when you're watching your video, you're getting a smooth, nice experience, no matter what the network traffic's actually happening underneath. So those are the 2 kinds of things that we target at. And we're going to take a look at a couple of demos here now. Let's kind of illustrate those points. So if we take a look over here, you may have seen some of these demos before. They basically illustrate the points quite well, where you basically have 2, it happens so fast, so we better step back a second. But you have an experience on one hand of what the old server is and what the new server now brings to you. On the left side is that old experience under the old Windows Media or Windows 2000 server, and then on the right side is .NET. So we're actually going to start up the left side first, give it actually a good head start. You see, this is the typical experience you go through, right? 17, 50%. But in a heartbeat, I can hit on the left and it starts. And actually, if I wanted to stop this even started, and I could actually show you how I could probably start and stop it multiple times before we actually get to see anything on the left. Now watch what's happening on your right side there. This is the kind of experience you want to have with streaming, right? You start it, and it's there, right? This is a dramatic improvement over what you basically see across any products today with streaming, including our old stuff and competitors and so on. We've really tried to focus on that sort of instant gratification where you actually can see it immediately. I have the sound turned off on both of these. So that's actually one dramatic improvement inside of the Corona set of features, Corona components, the new player and the new server. And we also, that's the instant on experience. Again, that also includes how you can transition between content easily. The always on experience is where we actually, I'll illustrate some of those network conditions that can occur that actually kind of mess up the streaming experience. So in this setup is actually one button here which will have a race for both of them to start. And I'll give them both a shove. So boom, instant experience. The left takes a while to get going. I'll let them actually go for a second, get streaming. And all I'm going to do is simulate basically one of the network conditions that can happen. Again, mostly bandwidth fluctuations is where you get a lot of problems, but also just disconnecting the network like this. See in the lower right-hand corner where it says network disconnected. This side here on your right, your left, 5-second buffer plays out and you're basically done. Right side continues to play. And actually, if you continue to let it play long enough, we'll actually buffer and actually store and cache that entire content on that local machine. You as an administrator have total control over that, in case you don't want that to happen. But what will actually happen is I could stop this and restart it, and it would continue to play even though I'm still disconnected. Okay, that's pretty cool. That saves a lot of network traffic on your corporate intranet and provides still a great experience for you. Still disconnected here. So that's just a couple of looks at some of the exciting kind of new technologies around what we call fast stream, which is a great experience no matter what the different network conditions are. And now in the internet space, it's far more challenging as far as wireless networks, DSL networks, cable modem networks, et cetera. And this is where this technology can actually really do great things. And this particular technology is really great if you have a lot of bandwidth, of course, so that we can actually we're shoving down more content, in essence, down that pipe faster because we have the extra overhead there. Okay. So that's kind of a quick look at fast stream. All right, so now the second area, dynamic content programming. This is the server-side playlist technology and the ad support stuff that I kind of got into just a little bit earlier. Now this is a huge new capability inside the server. This is like taking all of the client-side playlist technology, where you can actually insert content dynamically, change it dynamically, putting it all on the server, and probably tripling the amount of capabilities you have here. It's a new playlist engine that exists on the server. And what's cool about it is you can change this content dynamically. Again, that's a real important feature. I'll talk about wireless here in just a second. It has a cool capability there and provides some new business models in that arena. And then also it's focused around ad support. So it's still trying to make and help content providers, especially on the internet, enable their ad business models through actually offering new ways to actually do advertising. And then we also couple that with the Corona release with brand new codecs and lots of other stuff that actually help drive down the cost of streaming in general. So we take a look at what exactly are playlists. Well, they're literally executed on the server. Again, the client makes a connection, playlists executed on the server, which is, actually saves a lot. If you remember on a client side, what you're having to do if you had 10 items in a playlist on the client side, you're making 10 connections across the network. Connect, play, disconnect. Connect again. In this case, you're making one connection to the server. The server actually is going out and connecting to all those sources and providing one clean stream back to the player. It's a far more efficient network capability. To note that we aren't doing anything with client-side playlists as far as discontinuing them in any way. We're actually innovating in quite a lot of cool ways in Corona with client-side. There's actually lots of benefits for both, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Kind of illustrate how this works. You have, let's say, on-demand server-side playlist. Client makes that one connection to the server. Server can go to disk, creates basically has a server-side playlist of 3 items, and then basically streams that back to the player. Now, the kind of scenarios that you can imagine this enables are a lot of what you see also with client-side playlists, but a 7x24 corporate news network, a 7x24 internet radio and TV station, and again, this personalized radio station idea, the server has been built so that you could actually allow for personalized on-demand playback of content for corporate scenarios or internet scenarios. So you might be in the marketing department, and you might daily come in and have a personal profile for what you like to view that's, of course, marketing related or news related. You pick actually the items you like in your profile. The server can actually go off and get you those particular items daily. Those kinds of capabilities are enabled through this. Also live producer kind of scenarios. This is where you have multiple camera angles at an event. Like if we had 3 cameras in the back, I could actually be producing in the back where I say, let's go with camera 1 now, let's go with camera 2, let's go with camera 3, all inside the software. If you kind of look at this again like a broadcast studio set of capabilities. And then ad supported models, pay-per-view supported models, ad replacement, and so on. So what are the benefits of server-side playlists? Well, there's quite a few. You can imagine actually for a handset. If you had the experience you wanted to have for an end user on a cable, on a set-top box or a handset or a thin device that you carry around your corporation, like a thin device meaning like a PDA device or something like that. Well, these devices don't typically have a lot of footprint, a lot of memory footprint, right? And a lot of horsepower for actually executing playlists of content, lots of things that you want to play. Well, server-side playlist is great for that scenario. One thing that we worked with a lot of wireless carriers on in particular, for instance, is with a handset, you could provide new business models like you have the gold and the bronze and the silver subscription model, where you say for the gold subscription model, at 5 o'clock every day, your handset can connect and actually play to it all the content that you as the end user say that you like to listen to. You want to listen to top politics of the day. You want to listen to a set of things that are sports related. These kind of things are enabled through data today with certain handsets, and we can actually bring streaming media to that now. Whereas those handsets can't typically execute these kinds of things because the footprint's really small. So that's actually a great enabler. And again, that could be also used for like a PDA you take around your corporation. Okay, the IT department can actually create these kinds of personalized experiences. The full capabilities for all kinds of things, from station IDs and emergency announcements. I kind of showed that a little bit earlier. Talked about the dynamic nature of this stuff too. So this is a Smile 2.0 based engine, if that's of any importance to you at all. It's basically a superset of the ASX technology, which is client-side playlist today. Typically, a server will read this text file, and I'll actually show you what that looks like. You can move this text file around anywhere, which is kind of nice. Playlist transforms is just a kind of a nice capability for actually altering playlists dynamically also. And just to note that if you're familiar with this Smile 2.0 stuff, this is not about layout. Our browser supports, IE supports Smile 2.0, right? Animation, objects flying around the screen, that kind of thing. Well, that's kind of layout. Smile is applied to layout objects. Smile, in its basic sense, is a timing mechanism for how to time the playback of objects. In our world, that's streaming media, right? So we can play back a sequence of things to do. It's pretty sophisticated. It's a pretty sophisticated language. Microsoft actually had a big part, along with Real Networks, to actually come up with Smile 2.0. We say that here's all the capabilities that a TV broadcaster has, and these are the kind of things they want to be able to do inside a corporation on the internet. These are the kind of capabilities and the syntax we need, and we actually worked quite closely to come up with the Smile 2.0 standard. And it is a standard. So in the advertising area, we support a whole number of different kind of capabilities, from bumpers or interstitials. There's a lot of different names for it, gateway ads, and so on. Short clip support, which means a lot of people are trying. You want to actually do just a quick brand that you want to say, "You're welcome to the corporate news network," and then you play your content, that kind of stuff. So that's engineering-wise actually a challenge. Cookie support, if you're familiar with the need for that. Ad measurement being super important for the internet, and we do some cool new things for that. And also this idea of tones. So if you're watching the the Leno show, you sometimes come back from kind of give you an idea between national and local ads. The NBC will send out typically a national ad, but they'll also allow your Seattle area regional advertising as well. We actually enable, through our end-to-end architecture, that kind of infrastructure where you can play a national ad off one server, that stream goes out to the Seattle area, and actually locally you can insert a local ad. If you're familiar with the experience for the timing of all that, sometimes you come back from an advertisement on the Leno show, you actually see the guy sitting on the moon or some kind of graphic like that. Well, they provide actually a lot of slot time in there for those local ads to play, so you can come back within a few-second time frame. We've worked out those kind of issues in the software actually to enable those kind of experiences. Because in the end, it means more money for the content provider. In the end, that means higher CPMs because you could do more targeted advertising down at the local, personal level or at the national level. So I'll give you an idea, too, about how, now ads are not typically just played like a file on a disk. You dynamically create them. If you're on the internet, every content provider wants to be able to actually say, every time you play an ad, I want you dynamically to go out to an ad service vendor like DoubleClick or Engage or any of the other people out there like Lightning Cast, and dynamically play what ad to play. So you see here that the kinds of URLs that are capable inside a server-side playlist are not just files. They could actually be URLs to anything from another server as well. So that ASP reference right there is basically an ASP service dynamically saying, let's play 3 ads, and here's the 3 ads to play. Those 3 ads come back to the server executes those 3 ads, and then plays the next content. So lots of cool capabilities for manipulating content with the server-side playlist technology. Another capability is called wrapper playlists. Kind of imagine, if you will, the scenario where you go out to MSN, CNN, ABC, a lot of people providing movie trailers. Well, in order to monetize that content, what they'd like to do is also to be able to play an ad, of course, before you actually watch or listen to any content that might be entertainment or news related. And so a very easy way to do this, you might have thousands of clips. You produce almost daily, even hundreds of clips at least, that you put on your server. But before anyone actually connects and plays that content, you want to be able to configure the server in such a way that you can just play this ad first, play that ad first before this content's played. Well, wrapper playlists do that. It basically says the client requested something. You notice the number 2 there. But before they play it, this playlist says, let's play this thing first. Then play what they request. And I'll even finish it off and have them watch another ad. Just really get that money going, right? Monetary gain. So what I'll show you is actually now how to actually do a number of those kinds of scenarios. So we'll come back here to the server. And we'll start off first with just a simple playback of a playlist file. We call them WSX files on the server. If I right-click, I'll actually show you what one of these looks like. So it's just, this is Smile 2.0 type syntax, whereas opposed to its ASX syntax. Here's a list of things to play, similar to the program broadcast we played earlier. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of parameters you can set up for this content. That's pretty much it. You double-click in our UI, you come back and actually then play that content. And it basically just continues through and plays a bunch of cool stuff. So that's just a quick playback of a playlist file. Now what I could also do is create a new playlist. If you come in down here, you see inside the UI, there's a playlist editor right here. And this is an on-demand publishing point. So that's why every time I connect, it's going to start anew. It's an on-demand experience. If I click this playlist editor, I can have basically a quick way to say, let's create a new one or edit an existing one. I come right back to this UI. I'll just quickly show you how easy it is to put one together. These are some of the different syntax capabilities inside the language. But if I just click here, again, different ways to actually specify URLs for entries in a playlist. I'll click Browse here. In this case, I'll say that I have, say, a bunch of music videos that I want to play. So I've got these 3 music videos. I'll shift-click, select them, click OK, boom. Now I can do different things like come in here and say, let's play that one for 10 seconds. Let's play that one for 10 seconds. I can play the last one for 10 seconds if I want. I'll click on this node here and say, let's repeat all of that stuff twice. So these are all just a bunch of different cool things you can do, set the duration for it and so on. So I'll click Save, and I'll say, save my videos. And I'll close this. I come back here and look at this list. There's my new playlist. I can right-click and edit this file, but in this case, I'm just going to test it. See how quick and easy it is to put this together. It's kind of, this is great classical music. So what it'll play is 10 seconds, goes into the next clip, so on. See how easy it is to kind of put these experiences together. Now another cool capability is actually, let's say that you have a whole bunch of content you just ripped on your, take a look here. You just ripped a whole bunch of content onto your PC. And in this case, I have 3 different albums, and they usually get specified as different subdirectories. And even some of these have multiple albums within them. So basically, you just have all this content, and instead of actually having to go through and specify every file in the playlist, play this one, that would just take forever. I'll show you another cool, easy way that we basically say, point at this top-level directory and just shuffle everything and loop it underneath it, create this really cool playlist experience. And we actually do this on our corporate network where some people have set up their personalized broadcasts this way. And it's quite easy. I'm up here at the top-level publishing point view, looking through all these publishing points. I click Add. I come through and go to the wizard again. In this case, I'll call it Music. And in this case, I'm going to say I'm going to basically take a bunch of files in a directory and just play them all. So I'm just going to quickly go through here. I'll play it on demand instead of broadcast. I'll find that directory that I want to play, which is rock music. And there's those 3 subdirectories. And this checkbox right here says, let's just play this all of this content, and I'll allow these things called wildcards to be used on the player, which is kind of a cool capability there. So then loop and shuffle are options I can do here. Take all the content and all the subdirectories, loop it and shuffle it. I can log it, summary, done. Now again, this is now configured on the server. If I move this here, you have this new publishing point on the left called Music. And now I want to tell everyone about it. So I'm going to announce this directory. and create these ASX files or sample HTML files again so that I can actually listen to this. And notice I haven't touched a single file itself. So I haven't listed out a song, for instance, in a playlist. But in essence, it's a dynamic playlist where the server is actually going to look at that top-level directory, and it's going to dynamically create this playlist underneath it. So if I hit test, and if I hit it again, because it's dynamically changing it, now we're playing something from a different CD. Now, even on corporate LANs, even on the Microsoft LAN, we actually have a number of stations available for people to play in the background, for instance. Sometimes it's news-related, sometimes it's just music-related. So it's actually of interest to a number of corporations as well. So that's pretty cool. Now I'm going to show you something along the lines of ads. So if I were to double-click here, go back to my on-demand publishing point, my default one, I'll go back to that playlist I created earlier. I'll show you how easy it is to drop in an ad. So here's this playlist I created a moment ago. I'll say edit. And if I want to, say, add an advertisement, notice I just have to click here. Instead of media, I'll say add an advertisement. The reason why I choose that instead of media, because I could really choose either, and I'll choose this XP ad, is that I can change the order if I like here, is that if you look here on the right, I give it some special attributes. Typically, ads that you play, you don't want people to skip, so that's one thing that we default for you. And also this thing called advertisement. It has a special meaning in the server. You can actually log off advertisements, and you can actually create these cool reports that a lot of people, like from different content providers, need to say, here's all the ads I played for this particular provider, so I need this much money. What's the CPM value, and so on. So we provide ways to actually to monetize your content, and actually track it and log it and measure it. So it's actually that easy. I will save it off. Now if I were to double click, instead of playing that bus that crashes in the side of the car first, it plays the ad, of course. And then it goes on to play the content. So that's how easy it is to add an advertisement. I can also I can come over here and I'll show you that advertisements served by publishing point, we allow you a way to track how many advertisers actually played. Another thing I'll show you too with logging is this thing here, ad log. I could duplicate, actually, I'll show you how I could take this. This is out of the box, this client logging thing. I created this actually during one of my demos. But I could say, let's duplicate that logging plugin, call it the ad log. Call it ad 2 since I already have one. And now I'm creating another log for this particular publishing point. I could have n number of logs that track clients. In this case, this particular plugin is going to track just advertising content. So again, this is a different way to measure this content. Basically, this was that role that we looked at a little bit earlier. So just a couple of different ways to actually track ad content. So the last thing I'll show you now is with wrappers. So I mentioned this idea, this scenario where you have movies on the internet or songs you play, and you want to monetize that better. You want to be able to play something up front. Now, the corporate equivalent of something like this would be, as you watch that live executive broadcast earlier where I connected to this camera, that's a broadcast. Just like when you turn on your TV, what do you see? You see whatever's playing right then, right? It's in the middle of content. Well, in the internet, you can do much cooler things. You could do something like where the knowledge worker is attaching to that channel, first play this thing on demand, which might be a welcome to the Ford network, for instance. That plays for 5 seconds on demand to the end user, so it plays in its entirety. Then it joins them to the broadcast. That's one of the cool benefits of this technology. So this idea where you can actually, even during a broadcast, have this thing that plays first and then goes into the broadcast. Well, that's the kind of experience that I'm going to show here with a slightly different scenario. Is I have these two movies, a couple of clips from Crouching Tiger and Gladiator. If I double click on this one, it plays it just normally without any kind of this might be like a movie trailer that you might see on the internet. Again, it might be some content on a corporate LAN that you want to watch as a training piece of content. But instead, if I want to have something play before that, I go to something called the advertising tab here, and it teaches me about all the cool things I could do with ads. And this wrapper idea here is where I can now click on a wizard down here in the lower left and say, remember how we talked about how the client might have requested something, but let's first play them something different. So in this case, I'll play, a Holland America ad before playing them that Crouching Tiger movie. So again, these things are stored as playlist files, XML files, and basically done. This is enabled. Here's the name of that file. And basically now I come back here, play it again, and I'm listening to my advertisement before I actually go off and play that. So again, for a corporate LAN experience, that is more applicable for where you do have a broadcast and you want someone to listen, say, welcome, Microsoft confidential information about to be presented, then you go into it. Forward confidential information, then you go into it, that kind of experience. Okay, cool, that's kind of a pretty quick take on server-side playlists and advertising, if that's of interest to you. I'll go into the next section. The last two sections actually go pretty quickly there. In industrial strengthness, so obviously there's a ton of types of things that go on with large distributed infrastructures, very sophisticated networks that have to do lots of interesting, crazy things sometimes to distribute content, and also a lot of issues related around security, of course, and scale, and so on. Well, this server has actually been designed to really handle a lot from the ground up. 3 years ago, I went to design this thing. It had to be better in scale than its predecessor, and its predecessor already was a lot better than anyone else on the market for a Windows platform for scalability. Reliability, you can't go down, you can't reboot it in the data center every day. The ability to not only scale up and get a lot more scalability off that one server, but scale out. Okay, so think about like a Ford or any large corporation, or even Microsoft. You've got a lot of remote offices. How do I get the stream from here to all my remote offices securely and reliably, so then it can basically allow any number of people to actually experience this? So there's a lot of new capabilities that we've enabled on for all of these issues, and we're going to go through those now. The areas of focus are in scaling up and out, reliability, security administration, and some cool new standards that we support in this version. So as far as scaling up, we've had some initial tests now in this server that actually will, for some scenarios, at least double the scalability of the old server. So why is that important? Well, clearly for hardware costs, in the end, TCO, right? Basically your total cost of ownership goes way down if we can actually provide better performance off a single server than instead of having a set of racks of different servers. Even today, our current server in Windows 2000 is the only server that we felt comfortable with submitting to a standards that's not standards, but a benchmark provider, which said we'll basically benchmark anyone out there that's willing to actually see how well they scale. We're the only one to still do that, and we actually have great performance off our current server. And again, we've been able to double that. And in one particular scenario, we've actually gone way, way up above, even upwards of 4 and 5x. So actually, we've gotten some great performance in the new .NET server coming your way. Now, as far as scaling out goes, so this idea is where you have a central server set up here, say at Microsoft, and you would have a bunch of remote offices you need to enable. So how do you do that? Well, typically, today's technology, you can basically manually create these distribution streams out to, you have a server in every remote building, and you distribute one stream to that machine, and then those clients connect to those remote machines. Well, a far more efficient way to do that is with cache proxy technology. And in this version of the server, and this is just about as big as the server-side playlist technology as far as capability goes. There's a brand new platform that enables anyone, from a corporation, an OEM, internet cache proxy provider, or solution providers, to build custom plugins, or policy plugins as we call them. We do all the hard work in our process, basically, of enabling all these cool cache proxy capabilities. You write a pretty simple policy plugin that says, this is how I want to be able to move content down in this machine. Pre-stuff the top 10 items. Age them out every night. Here's this user's connected. I don't want them to stream from this server. Redirect them to this other server. Or proxy through content. Basically, a plugin should be nothing more than you provide sort of the policy of what you want to do, we provided a great platform for enabling all those things. We do all the hard work in actually getting that stream, about actually aging out the content, checking for freshness, and all these kind of cool capabilities. So no one else has this today. We are really excited about this because this is a platform. We're going to enable a bunch of third parties, and we've got a number of corporations that are interested in writing their own policy plugins for this, because just about everyone has a different way of wanting to actually manage content on their network. So this will be a great way to fit into third-party solutions as well as corporations who want to build their own. And this is really a huge new area for us in this server. For reliability, today's server actually has got lots of good anecdotes from customers, corporate and internet, that we actually have great reliability. We're not a server that tends to go down at all. We're trying to meet or beat that type of capability in our current testing for this server. We actually have great reputation for this, and we're going to continue to do that through just really rigorous testing of key scenarios. We also have some new capabilities along reliability, and this idea of, as I mentioned, I'm going to get into a platform next, but there's tons of different ways to write plugins for our server. Well, one way to increase reliability so the server doesn't go down is to actually allow those plugins to run in proc or out of proc, in process or out of process. And so we have that capability. We also have the capability of providing this kind of cool way of doing connection reliability. If you take a look here, you have a bunch of players that connect to a server through a publishing point and through a playlist, for instance, and you might go to an encoder like we've done here today. Well, one way you can provide one level of reliability is actually, let's say that this server were to go down. If you notice, this is a client-side playlist. And if one server connection goes down, you can actually then set it up so that that player will reconnect to another server just in a typical load balancing scheme. That's one way of actually providing connection reliability. Well, you can also take that now to a new level. You can do that today, by the way, with current technology. But with server-side playlist, you can also take it to the next level where instead of just one encoder set up, you basically set up two encoders and provide that kind of reliability and fault tolerance. And we exercise this ourselves today, actually. We have a website you go out to with a cool calendar and says, here's the 5 cool presentations being run live today. And you can connect on any of them and watch them live. Well, we have a whole department set up that actually sets these up and actually has a strict process of how you actually set up that kind of architecture. Along the lines of security, we've done a lot for enabling new kinds of authentication plugins, also different ways to actually authorize end users to that content. As you may have heard in the news, Microsoft is very serious about providing better secure software, and we are neck deep in lots of new kinds of ways of testing and finding and providing denial of service remedies and other kinds of secure ways of locking down the service so that it denies hackers, basically, and other kind of malformed requests and things like that. So we're spending a lot of time on security, especially recently. Administration-wise, I showed you the MMC UI. We also have a full web-based UI I'll show you. We also fully enabled through Windows scripting hosts and then the typical ways of actually providing administration in the OS. We also have a lot of new hosting capabilities. Now, you can imagine for corporate land where you have different departments that want to provide authentication, for instance, for this one, the marketing department wants to provide more secure ways of watching content and no one else can watch it. You might want to have a department, what's called billbacks, where your department's billed for the content that streams on a network. Some companies actually do that. But we provide a bunch of new capabilities per publishing point now. So everything we've been setting up today, there's a lot more control now on that publishing point alone. And I'll show you that actually in a demo here coming up. And on the lines of protocols, there's a bunch of new exciting stuff we're supporting in the way of protocols. IGMP v3 for multicast. RTSP is now supported in this version. It's a fully supported protocol on this new version that's been an issue for some people for more or less firewalls. We also support 1.1 now, HTTP, which is a significant issue for session full HTTP streaming, and also IPv6, which actually more or less in international markets, this is an absolute requirement now for actually any product that gets accepted into any commercial-sized operation. So I'll show you a couple of things real quick along the lines of I pull out my net cord. So I'll show you just basically on a particular broadcast publishing point here. I'll go out to properties and I'll show you just all the things you can now do on a per publishing point basis. you can actually set up that whole fast streaming technology I showed you. You can control that actually in this UI. As I showed you, you can actually do your own individualized logging and authorization and authentication. Also limits. Take a look at all the limits we have listed here. And also a whole number of things like wireless streaming in particular on a per publishing point basis. Again, this is more on the local level for enabling customers on the internet or corporate departments to have more control over the content that they have. Archiving, multicast streaming, and so on. Another cool capability we've enabled in this server is what's called a group. If you wanted to monitor not just one server, but n number of servers and actually total up all the connections across those, that's what I'm going to do here, is basically create, let's call it a corporate group, GRP. And if I come over here, I could add basically the 2 servers that I have running here. I can sit here and create an n number of those particular servers. And what we do is it basically goes out and basically collects information about the connections and bandwidth and CPU levels of those machines. So this is pretty darn cool for a lot of companies who requested a more global view of how their servers are running and global stats on those servers. And the last thing I'll show you here, more along the lines of administration, is what I mentioned earlier about web administration. Unlike the current user interface, which is really not very web-like, it's more like an application done with HTML, this is truly an HTML 3.2 based UI, which means I could be in a Netscape browser or a Mosaic browser on a Macintosh or Solaris or Linux machine, anything, basically anywhere, anytime administration of the server through firewalls, low bandwidth connections, those kinds of things. We also provide you, again, along the lines of providing very great information about security so that you understand whether or not the connection is secure or not. We tell you that it's not secure. So, for instance, I could basically timed out on my connection, but I can come back here, connect on this, and it'll show you that this is not a secure connection. You'll know all the time that basically this didn't, that you better either go back and configure SSL for the connection or provide HTML or NTLM authentication. We basically provide a great way for you to know what that is. So again, along the lines of providing very secure software. So what this is now a web UI. It looks very much the same as our MMC UI, right? Of this server, connecting from this machine to this server here. And I can go in and basically look at all the same kind of cool things that you see inside the MMC UI. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so we'll kind of come back and wrap up on the last section here on platform. So in this, we basically have, I mentioned first that everything you've seen today plus so much more is provided first and foremost in a platform. So we have actually 8 different kinds of plug-in capabilities. We've actually went out and counted, and we have actually over 1,000 different server interfaces. We're talking lots of customization on every level of this server. And actually for one particular interface, one plugin interface, we actually supply along the lines of you need to enable all different types of skill levels for what kind of programmer you are. For one particular plugin type, we actually offer 7 different types of languages, programming languages, for support for that interface. And you can see them all listed there. So at any type of programmer you are, you can actually customize the server. As I mentioned, the server is built on a set of plugins for the most part, a bunch of different kinds of plugins. And take a look at the architecture. These are all the different types of plugins that come in contact when the client requests something from the server. You have different events that get fired. You either authenticate the user. You can also provide a cache plugin that says, nope, redirect them or not. Once you do set up a stream for the end user, there's a whole number of different plugins that manage that stream to the end user. So the sync is what sends the packets to the end user. The data source that gets them from disk or from across the network and so on, and also a playlist parser. So a whole bunch of different kind of plugin capabilities. As far as the object model goes, like I said, everything you can do in the server is available through the object model here. From playlists to publishing points to monitoring and plugins to a standards-based event mechanism called Web-Based Enterprise Management Interface, or WMI. It's a standard that we support for eventing off the server. So take a look at the last demo here for this section. I'll show you a look at how easy it is to script something against the server. So this is actually what's called a Windows host script, a WSH script. And this is just a text file where I've specified that I want to connect to the server. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do first. And then I basically say, create this new publishing point called corporate channel, right there. And the source is going to be a playlist file that's in this directory. And then I'm going to start it. Pretty darn simple. So if I connect here, you see this is the message now, about to create this publishing point. Actually, for the effect, I'll pop up the UI first before I click OK. You can just watch it pop into the left column here after I click on it. So I created it, started it. I can come over here and actually now go and stream it. So it's very easy to configure this server. If I wanted to, you can come in here and take a look, of course, at what's getting played. So it's very easy to customize. Now I'll also show you one other capability here with this machine down here, where you have the scenario where I've mentioned that we have 7 different programming languages that we support for one particular plugin type. Well, if I went over to this particular publishing point called for fee here, and let's actually disable these guys. I'll come back and enable them. So to kind of show you, these are all different. For this scenario, I'll play that same concept that we played earlier, the Crouching Tiger video. But when I come back, I'm going to enable all these different types of plugins and actually show you how a J script, a C# script, a VB script, C++, and so on can actually be used to actually authorize that content. And the kinds of, let's just give you a look at what some of that content looks like. This is actually just one of the plugins. You see, it's pretty simple. We're going to get an event from the server, and then we're going to basically say yes or no whether or not the client's authorized to watch it. So it's a pretty simple kind of thing. I'm getting a lot of CPU problems here, so I'm going to turn off my encoder. So that's going to keep chugging here. It doesn't come back in a second. I'll just go out to the next demo. But basically what I was going to show you is there was 7 different languages there, and each one of them would be executing and authorizing this content. So you can actually have multiple plugins. It's not going to come back. So there's going to be 7 different actual plugins that you can actually have multiple types of programming languages and also multiple different authorizers for a single connection. And it just enables a broad range of programmers to actually be able to actually write plugins against the server from any kind of programming type. To finish off here today, I'll talk a little bit about deployment. So let's say you have your corporate LAN, and how do you get started with deploying Windows Media Services? Well, it's actually quite easy. This one laptop, well, these 2 laptops, this particular one here, where I was multicasting, I literally could have gone up to tens of thousands of users with the one multicast stream I had coming out of this box today. It's a connectionless type of multicast which enables that. Otherwise, I'd have 10,000 connections back to the server. But you don't need a whole lot to actually get going. Now, where'd that multicast go? Well, it goes as far as your routers enable it, because multicast only goes as far as if your routers support multicasting, great, then you go to the next LAN segment and so on. But what about, unicast streams? Let's say I'm not doing multicast and I need to scale with my unicast stuff. Well, what kind of server do I need for that? How do I distribute content out remotely to remote office? Well, that's the kind of things I'll mention here. We have some customers that do certain scenarios like this, either on the internet or for a corporate intranet, where in this case you have a bunch of rack-mountable servers. Those are all .NET servers, for instance, in the middle there. You have some network-attached storage, say, below where you store just tons and tons of content for all of those servers to access. And you have a load balancer on top. So a connection comes in, gets routed to any one of the servers. One of those servers grabs the content off disk really fast, because it's the network-attached storage, and streams it out to the user. So something like this could service, probably easily, well, probably even 30 or 40,000 streams with the new server. Of course, it depends on what bit rate you're using and what your capacity for that LAN segment is and so on. So this is kind of the concentrated clustering in a central location concept. And on the internet, places like Yahoo actually implement this, where all the connections from around the United States actually come into one place. Same with, for corporate LAN, where they all be coming into a central place like this. Well, another way to do this, though, is if you have remote offices, a far more efficient way is to actually distribute it out to remote sites. So I mentioned this, this one server could be this cluster for headquarters, and you can unicast to all these machines, or you can multicast to them. But you can also set up what's called a distribution stream to one of your remote offices, for instance, to another .NET server, and then unicast and multicast within that segment. Now, what I could also do is set up one of those cache proxy servers I talked about. So in this case, the client actually makes a connection to the server. Cache proxy server says, I don't have a connection to that stream back at headquarters, so I'll plumb that. What comes back is that same content. And now every subsequent client that connects grabs from that server. So you can see how much bandwidth savings you have on that kind of network. And then a slightly different twist is to set up the same thing for a different office, but also now multicasting that content on the other side instead of unicasting it. So there's multiple different ways to actually provide deployment of content. All right, so last couple slides here. Packaging. Just to note that we actually offer different features and different SKUs for .NET Server. In the standard server, we offer basically everything minus what you see here. So enterprise server, if you want cache proxy functionality or multicast, the wireless stuff, anything to do with authentication and so on, you need .NET Enterprise Server. Otherwise, the standard server has everything else, playlists, unicast streaming, you name it. Still lots and lots of capabilities in the standard server, but enterprise will be where most corporations will likely need to go for especially multicast content. Okay, so in summary, the 4 big areas, anything that will have you walk away with, it's this quality of streaming, through fast streaming, the instant-on, always-on experience, the server-side playlist technology for advertising and dynamically programming content, the industrial strength, the security work, our scalability work, scaling up and out, and also platform over that 1,000 APIs, many different ways to customize your implementation of Windows Media Services. As far as where I think you should be heading next with this stuff is we have so many new capabilities that really let's get it installed through Beta 3 that's available to you, I'm sure, and including maybe new IDSs. Install it and get comfortable and use it. There's obviously a lot of new stuff in there, lots of stuff to play with. We've really focused on the product and the SDK documentation too to focus it on scenarios, so you can actually figure out how to actually implement a new scenario. And the SDK is huge. It's got tons of new APIs. You can actually deploy today. We have the most successful server on the market, most reliable, most scalable server on the market today. It has unicast and multicast. It's in Windows 2000. That's actually a super way to go even today without this new version. And for more information on that, you can head out to Microsoft.com. But for the new stuff, for this new stuff I've introduced today, get Beta 3. It has all the documentation in it. The Platform SDK, also MSDN, or if you're a member of TechNet Plus, all of those things have the latest version of this software, and you can go out and get it. Well, thanks a lot for coming today. I hope it's been informative for you, and I'll be available for a couple questions in the back when we're all done here. Thanks a lot.